Well, just watched the last episode of AEW Dynamite for 2019, and it was a weird one. Let's get into it. This is All Elite Review. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan, and welcome to today's edition of All Elite Review, where today we are going to be reviewing the 12th episode of AEW Dynamite, which took place, I'm trying to remember where it was, in Corpus Christi, Texas. The final AEW Dynamite of 2019, because they're going to have Christmas off next week. Excuse me. I'm going to try to start abbreviating these Dynamite reviews a little bit, so that way I'm not going into like long spiels and shit like that. So let's go ahead and get into it. This was another weird episode. There were a lot of storylines that are being developed. But there was a couple of things that happened on this show that I didn't really agree with. Mainly towards the end of the show. But, I think there's definitely some things about AEW that are going to need to be fixed going into 2020. But I'm going to save all of that for next week. Because even though there isn't going to be a show next week for AEW, next week is going to be a special edition of All Elite Review where basically I do like a brainstorming session. Before I was just going to, it was supposed to be an episode about how I would bring the Battle Bowl to AEW, but there's a couple other things that I kind of wanted to touch upon. So we'll basically call that episode the brainstorming session. So that's all being saved for next week, though. But anywho, let's go ahead and get into reviewing this show. Before we do that, though, AEW Dark results from Garland, Texas. Run through these real quick. SCU defeated Private Party in a tag team match. Dr. Britt Baker defeated newcomer Machiko. Chris Statlander defeated B. Priestley, which set up those two to face each other on this episode of Dynamite for the number one contendership. And the Hybrid 2 and Pac defeated the Best Friends in a 6-man tag team match. Those are your results from AEW Dark. So let's go ahead and get into the matches. The first match was a tag team match. Of course, they were of course with NXT scheduling the NXT Championship match between Adam Cole and Finn Balor first. AEW tried to counter that with a tag team match with Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega teaming up to take on the Lucha Brothers. I missed a little bit of this because I was out and about, but what I did see was some damn fine wrestling. But I mean, Hangman Page and Kenny Omega, if it weren't for the fact that they were starting to go into this heel turn for Paige, Omega and Paige are actually a pretty damn good tag team. But so are the Lucha Brothers, so this was actually a pretty good match. There were some awesome moments in this match. Of course, Omega with the Singapore Roll, Lucha Brothers with Tope Suicidas. Pentagon even hit a coup de grace for 2 count, which is just crazy. Omega hit a powerbomb V-trigger combo. Phoenix with also a Tiger Feint roundhouse kick. Just to name a few moves here. Phoenix rolling X Factor. See, Paige also hit an avalanche fallaway slam. Phoenix hits a couple of super kicks. Omega with a sky high. Paige with a couple of discus lariats. Pentagon with a sling blade. He's probably the best one in AEW to do that sling blade. Of course, Omega's V-trigger is always awesome. Omega hit a Snapdragon suplex. He dodged out of the way of Phoenix's rolling cutter. But then they decided to go full bore with the Adam Page heel turn, at least the beginnings of it, because he tried to go for the buckshot lariat on Pentagon, but hit Omega accidentally. They basically take care of Paige by knocking him out of the ring. And the Lucha Brothers hit their Zero Fear finisher for the 3 count and the victory on Omega. And afterwards, there was some tension between Paige and Omega, and then Pac showed up on the Titantron, basically saying that he would not be held responsible for what happens next, since Omega is not granting him his rubber match. So he basically goes backstage into the locker room, and basically looked like he was going to attack Michael Nakazawa. Omega tries to run back there, but it turned out that Nakazawa was not there anymore, so we don't really know what happened with him and Pac. I tried to go looking for him, but gets jumped by the Lucha Brothers. And then Adam Page comes in and runs the Lucha Brothers off. But Paige was inconspicuously absent during the end of this show, which we'll get to in a bit. This was a damn fine match and a damn fine way to open this show. I gave it 4 stars out of 5. Then we followed it up with another tag match. It's Cody against the Butcher and the Blade once again. Only this time his tag team partner is Darby Allin. A lot of people weren't exactly happy with the fact that Cody and Darby Allin went over in this match. It's like, oh, it just makes the Butcher and the Blade look like losers. You can't have Cody losing every single fucking time to these guys, though. That's the other thing, because Cody is just too big of a star for that. You know what I mean? So, getting mad about it is just fucking ridiculous. Now, especially since it sets up Cody versus Darby Allin on the New Year's Day edition of Dynamite. So, I mean, what the fuck are you guys complaining about? Like, seriously? I swear, some of you people look into these, wins and losses just way too seriously. I mean, I might agree or disagree, but I mean, some of you just you go way over the cliff. But some of the highlights from this match, Darby Allin, of course, with his sky-high arm drag, that always looks good. But the Butcher, Andy Williams, hit a nice lariat on Cody, which turned him inside out. Cody hit a nice power slam on the Blade, Pepper Parks. The Butcher and the Blade hit their side slam leg drop combo for a 2 count, and then a drop kick gut wrench suplex combo for a 2 count, which was pretty good. The Butcher hit a fallaway slam. Cody and the Blade tried to go for cross bodies at the same time, but collided in midair. Darby hit a Yoshitonic on the Blade, but didn't get a count because the Butcher actually had a line tag. And the Butcher actually put Darby Allin into a Texas Cloverleaf, and actually a really good one. Cody tried to come in and stomp to break up the Texas Cloverleaf, but Williams was just like, not happening. So Cody was going to try to bound off the ropes, but gets dragged out by the Blade. And then the Butcher turns the Cloverleaf into a Cloverleaf bomb, which is pretty unique. But Darby hit his shoulder ride stunner. Cody hits the Crossroads, but the referee gets distracted by the Bunny Alley, of course. But Cody and Darby hit twin tope suicidas. Although Darby looked like he got caught in the bottom rope when he tried to go for his and took a pretty nasty dive. Cody hits a disaster kick on the Butcher, which allowed Allin to hit the coffin drop on the Butcher on the apron. And then I guess Cody is turning the springboard cutter that he's been using into a new finisher of his. Because he leapt up to the top rope and hit the springboard cutter, which I guess he's calling the Cody cutter now, for the 3 count and the victory. I gave this match 3 stars out of 5. It was a pretty solid match. And that was pretty much, the theme of the night. I mean, a lot of the matches were solid. They weren't spectacular, but, they were solid. Nothing really wrong with that. The next match was a squash match. Awesome Kong against Miranda, Elise. I mean, there wasn't really much to this one. Kong hit the Hurricane, the spinning back fist, and then the Soul Collector, which Elise kind of botched a little bit. She landed on her knees instead of her face. But Kong got the 3 count in the victory in a squash match. And of course, as usual, I guess squash matches 1.5 stars out of 5. There wasn't really much to them. And of course, the Nightmare Collective took another lock of hair for their collection. The next match was actually a really interesting one because it was a special 10-minute time limit match between Jungle Boy and Chris Jericho. And of course, Jericho said the previous week that Jungle Boy couldn't last 10 minutes with him. And they set this match up really well for that. So, highlights of the match. Jungle Boy hit a nice Arabian arm drag where he does like a Arabian style moonsault off the top rope and does an arm drag with it. Jungle Boy with a Hurricane Rana got a 2 count. But then Jericho started taking advantage with snake eyes, some knife edge chops, and hit a couple of code breakers. Could have gone for the 3 count, but of course, being the cocky heel, he pulls him up at the count of 2. It's like, and then Luchasaurus and Hager start fighting on the outside after Hager gets involved. Marco Stunt tries to go after Hager, and Hager knocks him out with 1 punch. You know that there's going to be a collision between Hager and Luchasaurus, and I think it's pretty obvious at this point that a lot of people want to see Hager get his shit pushed in. And if it's done by Luchasaurus, then holy shit, that would be a monster explosion from the crowd, I'll tell you that much. So everybody at ringside was basically ejected for the fight. So that just left Jungle Boy and Jericho in the ring. Jungle Boy hit a small package for a 2 count. Hits Tope Suicidas. Hits a somersault plancha, which looked really good. And hit a diving DDT. Only got a 2 count. And a slingshot lung blower for a 2 count. Jericho misses the lion salt. And then Jungle Boy hits it himself and got a 2 count. And Jim Ross was like, man, how humiliating would that have been if Jericho would have lost to one of his own finishing moves. Jericho hits a nice lariat with 3 minutes left, only gets a 2 count. And then eventually Jericho hits a nice power bomb and turns it into the walls of Jericho with a little over a minute to go. But right around the 42nd mark or so left, Jericho really started to put like the Lion Tamer version in. But Jungle Boy held on and survived the full 10 minutes for a time limit draw. And Jericho thought that he won the match when the bell rang, but it turned out it went the full 10 minutes. And then he went outside and told Justin Roberts he demanded 5 more minutes. And nearly gets pinned twice and decides to just say fuck it and leave. And we learned later on that those extra minutes were unofficial. Then he came back out, threw a little pissy fit, and then did a promo on the ramp. He was interviewed by Tony Schiavone, who said, I told you he couldn't beat me. It's like, well, you said that he couldn't survive 10 minutes, and he did. And he did. And Jericho's like, I didn't say that. So he's trying to change his story, being the typical asshole heel. And then he kind of cuts a promo, basically saying that next week, or 2 weeks from now in Jacksonville, Jericho is going to be expecting an answer from Jon Moxley on whether or not he's going to join the Inner Circle. So this was a pretty good match for what it was worth. I mean, it was only a 10-minute match, but and it ended in a time limit draw. But the crowd was really into it. They were really behind Jungle Boy. And that's the thing that Jericho does. He tries to get these guys over. Tries to build new stars, and this was another way to do it. And even though it wasn't a victory for Jungle Boy, it's a draw. Which is better than nothing. So I gave this match 3 stars out of 5. SCU is interviewed backstage, and the Lucha Brothers come up, and Pentagon basically shows Christopher Daniels a picture of his botch from the previous week, and Daniels just walks off, all frustrated like. So yeah, the Lucha Brothers are being little pains in the ass right now for a lot of people. But then we get started with the big matches. The next one was, of course, the number 1 contenders match for Riho's Women's World Championship, which will be defended in Jacksonville. Chris Statlander against Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. Baker is still kind of hit or miss, with her matches. Here it was pretty serviceable. Nothing spectacular, but wasn't really terrible either, just kind of eh. Of course, Kris Statlander, of course, with her crazy moveset. I mean, it's easy to see why she was one of the hottest prospects in the women's side of things in 2019, and it still boggles my mind that WWE just let her slip through their fingers. I mean, and there was even reports that Statlander and the WWE were close to inking a deal, and she would have been sent to NXT and bolstered what is already the strongest women's division in all wrestling. And also, they have the hottest championship in the fucking company right now in WWE, because the women's title was on the line in the main event during NXT. This same night that this show of Dynamite went on. So you had Rhea Ripley versus Shayna Baszler in the main event. And what was the hottest championship? Probably one of the most anticipated matches of the year. So there was that. But some of the highlights of this match, though, Kris Statlander, of course, does her cartwheeling out of danger, does the Oklahoma roll for a 2 count. Baker with a nice Japanese arm drag. Kris with a single leg drop kick. Baker with a neck breaker and a lariat. Kris Statlander tries to go for the handstand leg drop, but Baker rolls out of the way. Let's see. Statlander hit a missile drop kick and a discus lariat. Baker hits her sling blade. Wasn't totally clean, but it was alright. Hits a superplex. Both started exchanging forearm shots. Baker with her fisherman neck breaker. Baker also hits a super kick and goes for the lockjaw. Actually gets the Rings of Saturn portion locked in, but Statlander actually muscles Britt Baker up onto her shoulders and then transitions it into a tombstone position and hits the Big Bang Theory for the 3 count and the victory, which means that, yes, she is the new #1 contender for Rio's Women's World Championship. The other crazy thing is that match is basically going up. They're basically both undefeated in singles competition. Both have 2 losses in tag team action, but Statlander and Riho are undefeated in singles competition. So there's going to be a lot on the line in Jacksonville for sure. And considering Riho's commitments over in Japan, which has really limited her appearances over here, don't be the least bit surprised if Riho drops the championship to Statlander. And of course, as hot as Statlander has been, and considering how much value that AEW is putting on her, it's pretty obvious that they strapped a rocket to her back and saying, yep, you're going straight to the top. Because she's only been in the company for like a month now, which is crazy. But then Brandy Rhodes comes out with the Nightmare Collective. Of course, she was trying to get Statlander to join. Statlander was going to do the boop thing that she does, but she wagged her finger on it and was like, nope. And then Brandy decks her with her heel, her high heel. So yeah, it looks like there's going to be a program between the Nightmare Collector and Kris Statlander moving forward. And don't be the least bit surprised if that involves the championship going forward. So they are starting to build some rivalries in the women's division, starting to get some storylines going there, which is one of the talking points I'm going to have next week, because there are some things about the women's division that definitely need to be addressed. And I do have something that could help get the women's division a little bit more airtime, so to speak. And some other things that could help out, but that's all next week, like I said. And then Tully Blanchard and Sean Spears to do a promo afterwards. After all this, this #1 contenders match, I gave 3 stars out of 5. Once again, pretty solid. And then we get to the main event, the AEW World Tag Team Championship. Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky SCU, the defending champions, against the Young Bucks. This match was pretty damn awesome up until the finish. There are 2 problems that I have with the finish. I'll get to that in a second, though. But some of the highlights of this match, Young Bucks, of course, doing their typical moves. The Buckle Bomb, Gamengiri, somersault plancha drop kick, the elevated drop kick, classic Young Bucks. Frankie Kazarian with a lung blower, Scorpio Sky with a nice Frankensteiner. He jumped from the floor to the apron. Well, he jumped from the floor and did the Hurricane Rana, or the Frankensteiner on, I believe it was either Nick or Matt. I can't remember. I think it was Nick. From the apron onto the ground. That was pretty crazy. Of course, Nick starts doing his, martial arts shit. The roundhouse kick, a tornado kick, and then the lariat bulldog combo. And then this was a crazy spot. Nick had one of his hands clasped to Scorpio Sky, does a hand chop, runs over to the turnbuckle. Sky tries to counter with a slap of his own, but Nick catches it and pulls Sky up onto the middle rope himself. And then Nick bounces on the top rope, and he really had to balance, and hits a Frankensteiner off that top rope, which was pretty freaking crazy. And Matt does a dynamic elbow drop, only got a 2 count. Nick, of course, with the Sky Twister press to the outside, which always looks great. The Young Bucks with a flying splash, ground moonsault combo for a 2 count. Matt puts on the sharpshooter on Scorpio Sky. Frankie Kazarian breaks it up with a DDT. And he starts getting some offense in, like a hip toss neck breaker, a double lariat, a slingshot Frankensteiner to the outside, which looked really good. Sky hits a nice somersault plancha to the outside, and then SCU hits their assisted DDT, got a 2 count. Matt counters out of Scorpio Sky's TKO into a spear. Both Sky and Kaz hit cutters, which they then transition into Dragon Sleepers. But Matt counters that with a locomotion to break up the other Dragon Sleeper. Kazarian hits a German suplex. Kazarian hits an assisted DDT on Nick on the apron. Now allows Scorpio Sky to hit the TKO on Matt Jackson. And this is where things went south. Not in the execution, but in just how this finish was just so abrupt. SCU hits the SCU later and gets the 3 count and the victory. 2 problems. 1, this match just ended way too abruptly. Like, it was flowing nicely, and all of a sudden it just came to a screeching halt, and I'm just like, what the fuck? And then secondly, the Young Bucks should have won. The Young Bucks should have won the tag team championships here, because when you consider what happened across in NXT with Rhea Ripley defeating Shayna Baszler for the NXT Women's Championship, and the thunderous ovation that got. When SCU hit the SCU later and got the 3 count, it was dead silent in the arena. They were like, that was it? So a great match that just came to a screeching halt. And then afterwards, the Dark Order comes out. Evil Uno basically says this is not a recruitment drive. This is an initiation, and all the creepers attack. And then among the creepers is the Beaver Boys. Reynolds and Silver. They have decidedly joined the Dark Order. And they started attacking the Young Bucks and SCU. The rest of the Elite tries to come out. Kenny Omega and both of the Rhodes Brothers try to come out, but the numbers game was just too much. And the announcers even made note that Adam Page was nowhere to be seen. And apparently one of the creepers was doing some really bad kayfabe punches on Dustin, and a lot of people were really reaming him out for it. In fact, Mark Henry said it. Maybe AEW should be firing that guy for just botching that. I didn't really notice it, but apparently a lot of other people did. And both of the Beaver Boys were given masks, and they officially joined the Dark Order. So I guess we can now officially call the Dark Order a faction. And they basically stood tall in the ring over the Elite to end the show. Now, a lot of people were not exactly thrilled about the ending to this show, ending with the Dark Order, basically attacking the Elite. On the one hand, I can understand why they did it, because, they've been doing all these vignettes and shit with the Dark Order. And the fact that they, they actually stood tall over the Elite basically is saying that, yeah, this is going to be, they're trying to make the Dark Order a huge threat, in All Elite Wrestling. The problem is, this was just not the time to do it. Because, like I said, when you have, just an unbelievable main event over in NXT, with Rhea Ripley winning, the Women's Championship, like I said, and then you see, this as, the finish for Dynamite. I mean, it was pretty obvious that NXT was going to, win this week in the Wednesday Night Wars. And that's exactly what happened. They had nearly 800,000, while AEW had nearly 700,000. So NXT gets their third victory in this so-called war. So if you're keeping score at home, it's AEW 8, NXT 3, and with 1 tie. But yeah, this match was still pretty good. It just ended way too abruptly, and the wrong team won, in my opinion. I mean, you really needed to have that giant explosion from the crowd to say, yeah, this was a great match. And of course, seeing the Young Bucks win the Tag Team Championship, I think would have been like, holy shit. That would have been a holy shit moment. But it was still a good match overall. This was in 4.5 star territory, but that abrupt finish, I mean, I can only give it a 3.75 out of 5 stars for this match. But as for my final rating for this show, again, it was a solid show. It just wasn't spectacular, and that finish left a lot to be desired. I'm going to give this show a 6 out of 10. Like I said, it was still a solid show. It just didn't really wow me, so to speak. But AEW is off until the new year, so it'll be 2 weeks before the next show, because they have Christmas off. So like I said, next week is going to be my little brainstorming session where I have a lot of things to talk about. What kind of things need to be addressed, for All Elite Wrestling going forward. And of course, some suggestions that I could get to AEW to maybe improve the product quite a bit, including, of course, what would have been the main topic of that video, the Battle Bowl discussion. But we'll get into all that next week. But that's going to do it for this episode of All Elite Review. Thank you very much for joining, and until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. Bye. Well, that is all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to rate, comment, favorite, like, and subscribe to my channels here on YouTube.com and over on BitChute.com. If you would like to sponsor my channel, go to my channel page at subscribestar.com. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. Have a good one.